Hey, Swedish Terapeut here. Hello. I know it's morning, but it's not early morning. So, välkommen, welcome. Do you remember the last time we met? So it was, you deserve a Fahrenheit former os, which means experience shapes us. And that was episode Q. So now we're on episode R, which is Humpty Dumpty. And this is important for me to have over my keyboard because if you remember the last time that we met, we had an egg, and that egg we used vinegar to take away the outside. So here is our egg. We had two of them, and it had this shell, and then the vinegar got rid of the outside shell. It ate it away. And that particular egg had, oh, that's the shell right there. That particular egg had a leak. So we've talked about tensegrity and how tensegrity is so very important for nature. So everything in tensegrity has a certain amount of push on the inside and pull on the outside, and pull on the inside and push on the outside. So it's all logom, and that's what holds it together. It's tension and integrity combined. So when you have logom tension and logom integrity, everything's great. Great. And then it was Stephen Levin who wanted to bring tensegrity into the realm of biology. So he called it biotensegrity. And we talked about Graham Scar's book, and he wrote that in collaboration with Stephen Levin. Stephen Levin's from the United Kingdom, and so is Graham Scar, and Graham Scar is an osteopath. So I wanted to show you what happens to eggs that have a leak. Yeah, now you can see it. You see all that white stuff up here. That's the vinegar that ate away at the outside shell, the mineralized shell. Now, this is a perfect yolk, and you can see there's just a little bit left, and it's full of vinegar water. So there's that little bit of cloudiness. That was another layer. That was another skin. Here's the first skin. And you can still see how it's a bag. And this bag, even though it had a leak in it, and it allowed the egg yolk to come out, it's a bag. And there's a certain amount of integrity in this bag, biotensegrity, because when it was doing its protective layer, it had a certain amount of push from the inside and pull from the outside, and a certain amount of pull from the inside and push from the outside. Lagom. That's a Swedish word which means moderate, not in excess and not too little. So, man, and so you can see where the hole is that formed, and the hole got bigger and bigger and bigger because the egg was not alive. Had the egg been alive, it might have been able to heal itself. But the egg didn't have any fertilization, and it didn't make itself into a baby chick. But you can see that cloudiness, that's part of another skin. Yeah. So its fraternal twin, I took out of water, the vinegar water. And so the fraternal twin got put in regular water, so the vinegar stopped doing eating away at the mineral shell. So we got left with this. And you can see here, you can see the yellow in there, but this squeezy bit, man, this layer, it's not thick. You saw how thin that little bag was, but it is doing a fantastic job containing everything. And this integrity is absolutely important for our body and how we perceive things. Because if this skin loses integrity, we get a leak. And if this skin loses integrity somehow through dehydration, somehow through an accident, somehow through a SCOTA, which is an injury or trauma, the whole system has a problem. And this is what I mean. The whole system has a problem. And keep in mind the awkward thinking of Swedish Terapeut. You are whole, you are seamless. This is seamless, even though it doesn't have its first skin. So its first skin is gone. It was right there, all that white. But this skin is also white. And in the human body, we have a lot of collagen type 1, and collagen type 3, which is cartilage in our ears and our nose and our breastbone. And we talked about a shark and how a shark has sensory receptors for electricity, electroreceptors, I think we said. And the shark is cartilage. If I remember right, there's no bones in a shark. It's just cartilage. And we have cartilage. We also have 22 to 33 different types of senses, but mostly we talk about our 5 common senses, which is touch, eyes, vision, nose, smell, mouth, taste, and teeth, taste, and then hearing, which is also part of a vestibular system. And this vestibular system works with the eyes to keep us in balance because there's a liquid deep inside the ear and it goes in this wonderful little circles. And when things vibrate, they cause a chemical reaction, an electrical reaction. Vibration is a really cool thing. So this no longer vibrates because it is no longer alive. And if I keep it in this water, eventually it will disintegrate. And this is just water, but gosh, you gotta love it. Oh yeah, you can see the brain and the yolk in there. Yeah. Well, I say brain, but here's the thing. Have you ever heard of Humpty Dumpty? Humpty Dumpty had no brain. So let's go talk about Humpty Dumpty. Yeah. I think Humpty Dumpty is cool. I grew up with Humpty Dumpty. So let's share the screen so you can see Humpty Dumpty. Mm-hmm. Oh, look at that! You get music from me. Slideshow. Yeah. Okay. We've talked about my mom, and this is You Deserve to Know Humpty Dumpty Had No Brain. And I start. This is the end screen, and I start with Do Not Lose Perception. So close your eyes for a second. I have to go all the way up to the beginning screen. That's like a teaser. You see everything backwards. Okay, so we talked last time about in Sweden and how our past is our past. And sometimes people say the past is in the past, and the past is in the past. There's no refuting that. The awkward thinking is that our past influences our experiences of today. We hold on to those. We perceive them. We touch them. We hear them. We smell them. And my mom would make me raspberry pies and blueberry pies because they were my favorite. So if I smell raspberry pie or blueberry pie being made, I go back to my childhood and how wonderful my mom was. because she would go out and she would pick raspberries just for my pie. And that's a wonderful person. So moms are wonderful. And I'm sure dads are too. Okay. So Humpty Dumpty had no brain. We talked about the tracks and if they're coming or going. And we talked also about Angela Duckworth and her idea of grit, which integrity, integral, also has the word grit in it. So the state of grit, passion, and perseverance, really awesome things that help inform us. And I was listening to Andrew Huberman on Lex Friedman's podcast, and Andrew Huberman said that dopamine is transformed into norepinephrine, which is a hormone. And when we have perseverance and passion about something, we make more dopamine. So if you're interested, go see Andrew Huberman. He's got his own podcast, and you can see Lex Friedman's podcast with him. I think it was 139 or 164. I think it was 164. It was the most newest one. So Humpty Dumpty had no brain. Humpty Dumpty lyrics from 1954 go, Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. We have a lot of surgeons that will take a hip or take a shoulder and give somebody a new shoulder. It is very hard to give somebody a new ankle because the ankle is so complex, where the foot meets the leg. We need a certain amount of stutza. We need a certain amount of elasticity. We need this to stay moist and in biotensegral to integrity. So it's not this bag that's just holding something. It actually has a function. It's moist. Sensory receptors live there. Neurons live there. My Meissner corpuscles are in my tips of my fingers and my lips, where they say glabrous skin. Glabrous is a fancy scientific word that means there's no hair growing. And those Meissner corpuscles sense the lightest touch. And if I were blind and I would have to read Braille, these fingertips would do that for me because they're highly sensitive. So once our integrity is gone, our body integrity, all the king's horses and all the king's men have a hard time putting Humpty Dumpty back together again. I would like you to know this. Young people and common folk, you deserve to know. What happens in the past is in the past. It forms our today, which affects our future. So every decision made yesterday affects today, and that will affect tomorrow. Decisions are important, and perception is important. If we lose perception, the ability to make decisions is less. Perceptions send information here, but it has to transmit through something. It just doesn't go from here to here. It can't make that jump. It actually has to travel. This is where our second and third skin come in handy. So, listening to Mark Solms from Dr. Ginger Campbell's podcast, he was talking an awful lot about consciousness, and that's not a subject that I can talk in depth about, even though I listen to Dr. Campbell's podcast a lot, and she tackles that subject quite often. But the idea of our cortex, which is a fancy name of saying brain, so let's just go back to terms that are common, and let's just say brain. So people have been born with a little bit of a brain, maybe 2%, and not 100%, but 2%. And those parents of those children will tell you there is somebody there. And I will tell you about my mom. There is somebody there. I want my mom back 100%. But there's so much of this going on that I don't see her and hear her as often. Actually, I don't see her at all. I only talk to her on the phone. Keep your perception system moist. Keep it with good integrity so that you can be whole and not in two parts. Yeah. These two parts don't make a whole, they make two parts. Yeah. So Humpty Dumpty had no brain. And yes, he fell off a wall, and all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. But why was Humpty Dumpty even on the wall? Well, maybe he was curious. He didn't have a brain, but somehow through all of our growing up and being a child and having a want to crawl forward and having a need to pull ourselves up so we can see over a table and having a desire to grab for a glass coffee. Having this desire leads to more proprioception, leads to more interoceptive sense. So Dr. Ginger Campbell interviews, oh, I guess I can't spell interviews. That should be interviews, Mark Solms, on May 28th, 2021, on the Brain Science Podcast. And I have the transcript that I purchased from Dr. Campbell. And Mark Solms talks about interoceptive and exteroceptive. And exteroceptive are all these five senses from the outside things coming in. And the inside things also go out. It's a two-way street. And if we have them logo, everything's really good. When they're out of sync, not so good. It is very hard to make a decision if we don't have all the information or if the signals are crossed. So if you remember, we talked about a woman that was car sick, and we showed a picture of her. And you don't even have to know the woman, but you can see on her face that she's sick. And it's coming from the car. So we have motion sickness, and we have traveling on a boat, we have traveling in a car. And the vestibular system and the vision, they don't sync. There's a mismatch of information coming in, and making a decision for the body and the brain is very difficult. And it's involuntary. So the idea that somebody can be born without a cortex, and as Mark Solms says, the parents of these children will tell you that you're crazy if you think that these are not conscious living beings, because they're curious, they're happy, they have wants, they have needs, their perception system is on fire. It is going. So I want you to meet the parents of Noah right here. These are the two parents, and they also have other children. And they were given an option about the pregnancy of Noah, and they were told that Noah only had a formation of 2% of his brain, rather than the 100%. And that came from a diagnostic tool, an imaging tool when Noah was here. When Noah was here. So at that point, Noah had no brain, but he's definitely not Humpty Dumpty because he's now 6 years old and he has formation of 80% of his brain. And he formed that. His body heals. His body has healed. And this has not been an easy journey for him, nor his parents, nor his family, but it has been a journey. And they've worked with people in Australia to really hone in on the sensations, the perception, emotions drive us. They make us have wants and desires and behavior. But there is no telling what this little boy can do because he has a want and a desire to surf, to be in the ocean and go surf. Go, Noah. You are brilliant. So I'm just going to bring up this pyramid of learning that came in 1966 with Williams and Schellenberger. And if you look at the bottom, the central nervous system is the base. And every tier above that is making the person up here. So we are whole, we are seamless. Make sure your integrity works. Make sure your biotensegrity works. The right amount of tension, push and pull. Please don't do this. Please don't go be parts and pieces. Your bags need to stay together. That forms into us. And a lot of the skin that we've talked about is super important. So our sensory receptors are involuntary. Our eyes move every 3 seconds and we have no way to stop that. It happens because it's taking in information. So we do not control them through conscious thought. We learn from them, but we can be conscious of them. We can be aware of what's going on around us. And when we're aware, we can make better decisions. So you deserve to know Humpty Dumpty had no brain, but we have the sense of touch and we have tactile. Let's see, tactile, vestibular, we have proprioception, we have taste, we have auditory, hearing, we have eyes, visual, we have smell, blueberry pie. And then we have more that adds up to who we are. So go be curious, go be happy. Sorry about that little finagle thing. We have a lot of times a Swedish therapist. What's it called? Technical difficulties, because I'm not technical. Now, this is an old book. This is a very old book. And if you look, it says, I can't read backwards. Oh, yeah, forgotten books. How appropriate, forgotten books. Look at that. Yeah, it's been a forgotten book. It was written in 1902 by an osteopath who formed osteopathy. And don't get hung up necessarily on the name osteopathy. He was a medical doctor, and at the time, pathy is something that is, well, I don't necessarily agree with the modern definition of the suffix pathy, which is like pathology, which is something wrong. We'll have a later discussion about that. But osteo means bone. So what this particular man did, AT Still, is to take a concept of bones and talk to medical professionals and say, there's a better way we can do things with medicine, because the medicines of the day in the late 1800s, early 1900s was cocaine. It was very addictive. And once people were on cocaine, it was very hard to get off. And it caused all sorts of cognitive problems, similar to today, because United States is 5% of the world population, but they take 80% of all pain medication. I know. They're 5% of the global population, and they take 80% of the world's pain medication. That is something you deserve to know. And a tragedy. So I've highlighted and I've underlined and read Dr. A.T. Still when he wrote in his philosophy of osteopathy. And I'm going to read this to you. Obviously, you can see what it reads, what it says. It says, when you deal with the fascia, which is the second and third skin, you are doing business with the branch offices of the brain. Under a general corporation law, I guess he was a businessman too. And why not treat these branch offices with the same degree of respect? We talk about the brain all the time. And as we saw from Noah, he's a living, breathing miracle, and we all are. And he has wants and needs and desires, and we all do. So stay whole, stay seamless, don't lose your perception, and go have a good day. Tack så hemskt mycket för att kom hit. Hej då.